Imagine for a second that the CIA has like a birth chart,
Right?
and that birth chart mathematically dictates that on July 3rd, 2026, global financial markets and major political figures are going to face this unprecedented, quantifiable squeeze.
It is definitely wild to think about.
Yeah, today we are throwing out the standard political playbook. We're ignoring the usual predictable weekly planning and looking at a geopolitical forecast driven entirely by, well, planetary math.
Exactly. We are looking at a space where human agency essentially takes a back seat to these gravitational algorithms. It is, it's a total collision between ancient mysticism and hypermodern geopolitics.
So welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring a highly specific, very intense astrological forecast for the week of June 29th to July 5th, 2026.
And this is compiled by a source known as Astrology.
Yeah, it's Astrology. And let me just assure you right now, this is not your typical back of the magazine, will I find love today horoscope.
Not at all.
This source claims to predict massive military conflicts, global institutional shifts, and even volatile cryptocurrency fluctuations. And they do it using this incredibly rigid mathematical framework.
Which really demands that we adopt a completely different lens for this analysis.
Right.
In this model, physical nations, massive financial institutions, and even purely digital assets have literal birth charts. And the theory is that those charts are constantly mathematically interacting with the stars in real time.
Okay, but before we even touch the actual predictions for early July 2026, we have to unpack the mechanics of this. We really need to understand how they are arriving at these conclusions.
Yeah, the methodology is key here.
The author relies on what they call a coefficient system. And honestly, reading through the source material, it felt way less like reading astrology and more like looking at, advanced sports analytics.
Oh, for sure.
It's like fantasy football. But instead of tracking a running back's yards per carry, this system tracks how aggressive Mars is on a random Tuesday and then adds that score to the birth stats of the Federal Reserve.
That analogy actually holds up beautifully when you dig into it.
Really?
Yeah, because the author isn't making these vague qualitative statements about planets being in retrograde. They are assigning literal mathematical values to transiting planets on specific days.
Right, like hard numbers.
Exactly. So on July 1st, for instance, the transit of Mars operates at a coefficient of +5, but then by July 3rd, Venus is operating at a -1.
Okay, but how does a world leader, or an entire nation for that matter, actually apply a +5 or a -1? We need to bridge the gap between that daily transit score and the actual subject being analyzed.
Well, the mechanism works by taking those daily transit scores, the +5s and -1s, and adding or subtracting them from your natal planetary score.
And the natal chart is like the permanent one, right?
Yeah, your natal chart is a permanent snapshot of the sky at the exact moment you or your country were born. So the transiting planets act as the incoming weather, and your natal chart dictates how well your specific house is insulated against that weather.
Wow, okay.
And running this daily math gives you a highly specific luck score for different areas of your life.
That actually brings up a crucial framework the author introduces, which we really need to keep in mind as we look at these real-world events.
The internal versus external thing.
Yeah, exactly. They draw this hard line between natal planets and astrological houses. The source says natal planets represent your internal behaviors, like how you inherently act. But the houses represent the possibilities of what will actually happen to you externally.
Right. The separation of internal drive and external fate is basically the engine of this entire predictive model.
The best way I could visualize it is that the planets are the actors and the houses are the stage where the action takes place.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Because you might have a brilliant actor.
Yeah.
Right. But if the stage they're standing on is mathematically collapsing, the play is still going to be a total disaster.
That dynamic is exactly how the author approaches the geopolitical flashpoints of July 1st and 2nd.
What happens then?
Well, the forecast for those 2 days is completely dominated by that +5 Mars transit, alongside major movements from Uranus and Pluto.
And Mars is usually associated with conflict, right?
Yeah, Mars brings war and physical energy, while Uranus and Pluto are the mechanics for deep, sudden disruptions.
So let's apply that actor versus stage logic to the real world, because the source does something fascinating here. They analyze the astrology of a leader completely separately from the astrology of their country.
Yes, they do.
And I was genuinely wondering while reading this, can a nation succeed on the global stage while its leader is taking an absolute mathematical beating?
According to the coefficient system, yes. And the source uses the ongoing situation in Ukraine as their primary case study for this divergence.
I really want to see the math on that. How does the system separate Volodymyr Zelensky from the nation of Ukraine itself?
Well, the author calculates Zelensky's individual chart based on his Aquarius sun. And the math for the first 2 days of July dictates that the Aquarius sign faces severe negative interference from the transits of Mars and Uranus. So the actor on the stage, Zelensky, is under intense personal and political pressure.
But the stage itself, the nation of Ukraine, has a completely different set of coordinates.
Exactly. Ukraine is calculated as having a natal Mars in Virgo, and that specific Virgo placement acts as a mathematical shield.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it absorbs the chaotic Uranus transit on July 2nd and actually converts it into a net positive for the nation's military and structural standing.
So we literally have a leader being mathematically diminished while the nation itself is mathematically strengthened.
Right. And the source takes that divergence and applies it diplomatically, too. They categorize NATO as an Aries entity.
Okay, an Aries entity.
And the prediction is that NATO might actually pull back its personal support for Zelensky the individual due to clashing planetary coefficients.
Wait, really?
Yeah, even as NATO itself, along with Turkey, which has a natal Mars in Libra, experiences a surge in military strength during this exact same window.
It's just wild to see real-world alliances and troop movements mapped out this way. And, just to be very clear for you listening right now, we are simply decoding the mechanics of this author's highly specific astrological model today.
Absolutely.
We are definitely not endorsing these predictions. We're not validating military strategies, and we're definitely not taking any geopolitical sides. We're just reporting on what's in the text.
Right. We are just looking at the math they've presented.
But the way they build this architecture of international relations based on planetary alignments is just staggering.
It is.
Because we're seeing this divergence between a leader and a nation in Eastern Europe. But the source suggests an even more volatile dynamic happens when two inherently opposed nations have inverted planetary alignments.
Yes. And that brings us to their forecast for the Middle East.
Right. Let's unpack that.
The tension in the author's math really peaks when they compare Israel and Iran. The source calculates Israel as having a Taurus sun and a Leo Mars.
Okay, so what does that mean for them?
Because of the inherent nature of a Taurus sun, the system dictates it is inherently vulnerable to the specific frequencies of Pluto and Uranus. So on July 1st and 2nd, Israel faces severe, highly negative transits.
But what does a negative Pluto transit actually mean on the ground? I mean, we talked about Mars being war, but Pluto sounds more, I don't know, systemic.
Systemic is exactly right. The author defines Pluto's negative influence as a period of extreme structural vulnerability.
Like infrastructure.
More like the foundations of the country. The calculation suggests Israel could face not just external attacks, but severe internal disruptions protests, or what the source terms revolutionary changes erupting from within the nation's own astrological house.
Okay, so if Israel's stage is collapsing under this Pluto transit, how is Iran's chart interacting with that exact same sky?
The math flips entirely.
Really?
Yeah, Iran is charted with a natal Mars in Pisces. And according to the coefficient rules, a Pisces Mars acts like a sponge for these specific transits. It soaks up the exact same planetary energy that is dismantling the Taurus sun and turns it into a highly positive tactical advantage.
It is a literal inverse relationship mathematically coded into their models.
Exactly. And the conclusion the source draws is that Iran is positioned to capitalize on this window of maximum astrological leverage.
To act against Israel.
Right, and specifically timing these maneuvers right before a major NATO summit scheduled for July 8th.
They are basically viewing global diplomacy as a massive game of chess, but the pieces are locked in place until the planetary coefficients permit them to move.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
And this intense security vulnerability isn't isolated to the Middle East either, is it?
No, it's not. The source issues a specific warning for Taiwan, Japan, and North Korea to dramatically heighten their security apparatus on July 2nd.
And what's driving that?
That warning is driven by a very specific moon transit. On July 2nd, the moon is operating at a +4 coefficient.
And the moon means what in this context?
Well, in mundane astrology, the moon governs public sentiment and domestic security. So the math suggests that the natal charts of Taiwan, Japan, and North Korea are particularly reactive to a +4 moon.
Meaning they get a blind spot.
Exactly. It creates a sudden blind spot or volatility in their national defense stages.
Man, okay, so we've been looking at physical battlefields, military strength, and national security through July 1st and 2nd. But the source claims the tension actually reaches its zenith when the weapons are put away and the checkbooks come out.
Yes, July 3rd.
Right. They explicitly call July 3rd the most intense day of the entire week, shifting the focus completely away from Mars to Venus.
And we should clarify, Venus in this geopolitical framework is far removed from its traditional association with, like, romance.
Yeah, definitely not romance here.
Here, Venus is the ultimate symbol of bilateral diplomacy, high-level financial structures, and the flow of global capital.
I look at this July 3rd Venus transit, which, by the way, the system assigns a -1 coefficient to, as a massive cosmic audit.
A cosmic audit? I like that.
Yeah, because if your natal chart falls under Gemini or Sagittarius, the universe is auditing your ledgers and your alliances on that specific day.
That's exactly what the math suggests.
The author warns that these specific signs might face sudden, crippling spikes in their expenses, or their most critical diplomatic relationships might just fracture without warning.
And the primary case study the source provides for this impending audit is Donald Trump, who is a Gemini.
Okay, so the math says Trump is basically walking into a trap on July 3rd, just days before that same NATO summit.
Right.
But the author goes deeper than just saying he will face pressure. They provide a literal hit list of who is going to cause it.
This is where the mathematical interaction between different natal charts becomes incredibly complex.
Unpack that for us.
The source warns that as a Gemini, Trump must be highly defensive against any entity possessing a natal Mars in Cancer or Capricorn.
Why those specifically?
Because on July 3rd, those specific Cancer and Capricorn placements act as a vacuum. They absorb all of that negative Venus energy and weaponize it against Gemini placements.
Okay, but who actually possesses a natal Mars in Cancer on the global stage?
Well, the author points directly to the foundational pillars of the global order, the International Monetary Fund, the Federal Reserve, and the CIA.
Wait, I have to pause here. The CIA has a birth chart.
Yes.
We are talking about the Central Intelligence Agency and the Federal Reserve, and we're acting like they were born in a hospital with a time of birth.
Well, in this system, the moment a charter is signed or an institution officially opens its doors, that is its birth moment.
That is just...
The sky is captured at that exact second. So the source calculates all three of these entrenched institutions as having a natal Mars in Cancer.
And the prediction is?
The resulting prediction is that on July 3rd, the IMF, the FED, or the CIA will leverage financial or diplomatic maneuvers to negatively impact Donald Trump.
It's just staggering to process. I mean, we are talking about the Federal Reserve making decisions on interest rates, or the IMF issuing debt reports. And this source argues those actions are mechanically linked to where Mars was located on the calendar day those institutions were founded.
It's a completely different paradigm.
It really forces you to look at these massive human-made bureaucracies as if they are biological organisms responding to seasons.
It completely reframes human organizational structures as subroutines running within a much larger cosmic algorithm.
I am struggling with the logic on how far that extends, though. I mean, okay, a nation has a founding document. A human has a physical birth. An institution has a charter.
Right.
How does this system assign a birth chart to something that doesn't exist in a physical place? Like, what about a decentralized network like Bitcoin?
Well, the source treats digital architecture with the exact same astrological rigor as a physical nation. Bitcoin has a fully calculated natal chart.
How does the system even determine a birth moment for a piece of code that just rolled out globally on the internet?
The author anchors the chart to the mining of Bitcoin's Genesis block on January 3, 2009.
Ah, okay.
That timestamp serves as its first breath. And based on that date, Bitcoin is assigned a Capricorn Sun, a Capricorn Mars, and a Pisces Venus.
It feels incredibly paradoxical that a decentralized, rebellious asset is given a Capricorn Sun, which usually represents rigid structure and authority, doesn't it?
It is definitely ironic.
So how do those specific placements react to the chaos of early July?
The math actually works heavily in Bitcoin's favor. Because of how those Capricorn and Pisces placements interact with the transiting planets, the coefficient system predicts Bitcoin will actively rise on July 2nd.
So while the physical nations are dealing with the destructive Mars and Uranus energy, the digital asset just escapes the volatility.
Pretty much. And Ethereum follows a similar pattern. The source dates its birth to July 30th, 2015, and predicts it will also rise on July 2nd.
What about traditional stuff?
Traditional commodities are mapped alongside them. Brent oil is slated for a rise on the same day. However, gold is calculated to be highly volatile across the entire 3-day window of July 1st to the 3rd.
Because it's absorbing the shock.
Exactly. It's absorbing the chaotic whiplash between the Mars physical disruptions and the Venus financial audit.
The crypto markets, the global oil supply, and the gold standard are all being played like instruments from the same cosmic sheet music.
It doesn't stop there. Regional exchanges are also plugged into the formula.
Like what?
The Abay ST100, the Turkish stock index, is assigned a birth date of April 5, 2013.
And what does that mean for them?
That gives it an incredibly concentrated Aries to chart Aries Sun, Aries Mars, Aries Venus. That fiery, aggressive Aries energy mathematically repels the disruptions, meaning the index is predicted to rise through the turbulence of July 2nd and 3rd.
Okay, let's step back. We have military clashes driven by Uranus. We have the CIA and the EVD wielding Venusian pressure. We have Bitcoin riding the gravity of its Genesis block. It feels like every layer of human activity is accounted for.
Everything.
But the author scales it up even further, don't they? They apply this coefficient system to the physical crust of the Earth itself.
Yes. The forecast sees absolutely no separation between human action and geological reaction.
Geological.
The author highlights June 28th and July 1st as critical mathematical intersection points for severe earthquakes, particularly targeting existing weak fault lines.
Walk me through the mechanism of calculating an earthquake. Are they looking at a specific planet?
They calculate this by tallying the daily coefficients of the sign of Scorpio.
Why Scorpio?
In this specific framework, Scorpio is the astrological house that governs the underground and hidden structures.
Oh, I see.
When the mathematical values associated with Scorpio spike or clash with incoming transits, the theory is that tectonic plates literally, physically respond to that tension.
The underground stage literally breaks apart.
Exactly.
And don't they also tie bad weather and severe accidents to that intense Venus squeeze on July 3rd? Effectively saying the atmosphere and our infrastructure will mirror the financial chaos.
Yeah, it is the ultimate holistic worldview. There is zero compartmentalization,
Right.
a boardroom decision at the IMF, a drone strike in the Middle East, a fluctuation in a decentralized ledger, and the shifting of a tectonic plate are all expressions of the exact same mathematical equation.
As we wrap up this deep dive, the sheer density of this architecture really stays with you. I mean, regardless of your personal stance on mundane astrology, the internal logic of this coefficient system, the way it tracks actors across these shifting geopolitical stages, is incredibly intricate.
It really is. And whether you are pulling up these coefficient tables to calculate your own daily luck scores or simply observing these global events with a healthy dose of skepticism, it remains a profound exercise.
For sure.
It highlights our deep-seated human desire to find overarching patterns and impose mathematical logic onto a world that, on most days, feels completely random and chaotic.
It is the ultimate attempt to find the signal in the noise, which leaves me with a final thought for you to chew on today. We spent time unpacking how this system assigns a birth chart to Bitcoin. Just think about the implications of that for a second. A completely decentralized, purely digital currency, invented by a pseudonymous coder, residing entirely on servers around the globe, is now being analyzed as though it responds to the gravitational pull of Jupiter and Mars.
It's wild.
What does that say about our enduring need to weave our most modern artificial creations back into the ancient cyclical rhythms of the natural world? Does our entirely constructed financial system actually possess a secret cosmic heartbeat? Or are we just staring at an incredibly complex weather app, desperately hoping it can explain why the storm is coming? Something to think about.